Hello, everybody, and welcome to Visionary Psychics. I'm Sara Wiseman, and I'm here with Catherine Elizabeth, who is one of our visionary psychics. So, welcome, Catherine.
Thank you,
Nice,
Sarah. Thank you so
nice,
much.
yeah, nice to have you here. So, we're just talking with each of the visionary psychics about their sort of unique way of approaching psychic opening and spiritual awakening. And your experience is really kind of centered around or began with channeling. And I wondered if you'd just tell us a little bit about how that went for you and how it is now.
Sure. It started over 20 years ago, quite by accident, in terms of one of my aunts passed away at a very young age, and she was actually only 9 years older than me. We were quite close, so she was like an older sister in a way. Um, she passed away, and it was in my grief of losing her that this kind of all started to come to be. I was trying to connect to her after her passing because somebody showed me that you could do like automatic writing. And so I'd never tried it before. And I just kind of broke down into this level of like a sobbing child because it wasn't working. And
Right.
then as soon as I kind of broke down to that level, then it just all started happening, like this back and forth communication. Like I stayed up all night talking
Oh,
to her because I could. And
mhm.
it started with that. And then it kind of progressed from doing automatic writing to all of a sudden just instead of it coming through the pen, it came through my voice, which was a real surprise to me. I'm
Mhm.
not from the mediumship world, so I really didn't really understand kind of what was happening and why. But my mom was always very open to it, so thankfully I could talk to her without feeling like I was going crazy because I can see how you'd think that you were.
Yeah, well, it's not a very mainstream accepted, or it certainly wasn't back then. It wasn't
Not
an
20 years
accepted
ago.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Did,
yeah. So
did,
it started with that, and then um, I just liked it so much. It just felt so good that I started doing it for family members that were missing her, and then it just expanded from there. And now I do it as my main business.
did you think, with your aunt as the departed, do you feel that she had special gifts when she was living, or she had sensitivity when she was living, and that helped her be able to cross the veil or come forward? Or was it, do you think it was a surprise to her too?
I
In
don't.
her,
I think it would be a surprise to her human self. We
Mhm.
never really had a lot of conversations about mediumship or anything like that. I think um, her death wasn't a surprise to her. She died of cancer. So it's possible that as she was going from, I'm going to beat this to, I'm not going to beat this, that a level of spirituality kicked in for her.
Yeah.
If that's the case, she never really, said much to me about it. I honestly just think that she loved me so much
Yeah.
that once she got to the other side, because this gift does explain a couple of things about me as a child and very strong feelings that I had about people that got disregarded because I was a child.
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
hindsight, it's like, oh, that's why I
Yeah.
had such a reaction to that person when I was 5.
Right.
But nobody knew that when it was happening. So
Yeah. And sometimes when kids are little, like their languaging is not, you know, perfect. Obviously, they're little. And so even what you were trying to express might not
yeah,
have been interpreted right.
yeah.
Um, as your channeling continued, it's not always your aunt who comes through now for you, or what, how does that process work?
Mostly it's my aunt if I'm doing for me or a family member. It's Archangel Michael if I'm channeling for like
Mhm.
a non-family member, then that's my source.
And when Archangel Michael first came through, I'm sure that was a big day for you.
You know,
Just like,
you
what?
you do have this feeling of, did I imagine that? But again, I don't have a religious background at all. I actually I've spent my life avoiding organized religion because the little bit of exposure I had to it just made me really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of put it in a category of I don't want that.
Right.
So um, but I think because it's not my background at all, when things like this show up, I have a tendency to go, oh, I'm not making this up because this isn't what I would make up. This isn't who I would bring in if I
Right.
was thinking it. It's not how it would go.
Yeah. That
And
totally
so
makes sense. It wouldn't even be your choice. Like you would be like, please
I
don't send
wouldn't
that.
be doing, well, I wouldn't even be doing channeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I just wouldn't, it was never a career path for me. It was something I gave no thought to at all
Yeah.
until it started happening. And then, like I said, thankfully, my mom has always had an
Yeah.
interest. And so I was able to, talk to her about it. And she was very supportive, which
Yeah.
and continues to be, which is wonderful because I'm sure there's people that don't have that if
Right.
it's
They're
not.
just sort of in the wilderness on their
And
own.
wondering like what is going on with me. And I do have some family members that have opened to it and been quite positive about it, so that's been helpful as well.
Yeah. When have you noticed, so now we're not through with COVID, but we're in a different state, and
Mhm.
we're not through with political upheaval, at least in the US, but we're in a different state. And
Mhm.
we just yesterday was the start of Aquarian Pluto in Aquarius. So I'm curious if you have noticed more recently that the messaging you're getting for people from channeling is becoming different, or if you're noticing any particular themes coming up for different, I don't know, just anything you're noticing about
Yeah,
how
I,
that's
I,
going.
I mean, it's always been very positive. That's just kind of the nature of these kinds of messages. But I find, especially now, it is a kind of like a grand message of um, being open to what you want to go and having your best um thoughts possible about, like, if you want it, it can be, just be open to the possibility of what you can kind of create in your imagination for yourself,
Hmm.
and get out of your own way. But it seems to be more so, it also seems to be more joyful, like, in terms of, I think that, like, where the messaging is coming from, it feels like they're quite excited about what is happening,
Yeah, yeah,
you know that it is becoming more mainstream, that more people are opening up to the gift for themselves, even if it's
mhm.
something that they're never going to use beyond just their own connection.
Their own
It's
connection.
just, we just feel more connected as a world in spite of the chaos that's happening. There just seems to be a greater sense of connection, anyways.
Well, and sometimes I think that the chaos of the world and how we receive our news, like on our smartphone or whatever, um, the chaos has caused people to connect to trauma and disaster, for example, but it has caused people to connect. And now they're sort of realizing, oh, we can connect. They feel the group energy all over the world. And then now
Mhm.
they're realizing, oh, and we could use this to create something good as
Well,
opposed to
sometimes,
trauma.
you need a level of being broken open.
Yeah.
And I think, for many people who, get this ability or realize this ability at whatever level in their, wherever they are in their life in terms of age, it usually, it seems to me, comes on the heels of some sort of
Yeah.
trauma or experience that they didn't particularly want to have.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's like the veils keep getting taken off
yeah,
through trauma or
yeah,
disaster, or even
yeah,
just a dream that didn't happen,
yeah,
or the sudden realization of it's not going to work like I thought, and it's just like we just keep surrendering
yeah.
just something higher.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you realize, like, especially, if, especially coming through COVID, like, and you look at how much loss there has been, loss of life, loss of jobs and businesses and homes, and
Mhm,
fractured families as well.
mhm,
Lots of marriages didn't make it through COVID.
mhm, mhm.
Um, but I think that the more you kind of have this experience of things not working out for you, the more you realize that everything is going to be okay.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Um, I think I wanted to ask, so you have a child who's neurodivergent, and that gives you like a really interesting perspective on not just raising a child, but also, I think, telepathy and sensitivity and different
Yeah.
gifts. And how does that, I think what I want to ask is, how has that advised you in your own opening up, in your own practice of opening?
Well, I think so. My son has autism, and he's almost 18 and still um, very nonverbal in many ways. And he also limits who he decides to talk to, anyways. So he
Hmm.
talks a lot to me now, but he had like almost no words until he was 12 years old. And so, and he's my only child, so he's my only parenting experience. And I think when you bring your baby home from the hospital, you're just expecting to get what everyone else got.
Right.
And with autism, it takes a little bit of time to realize that things aren't as they appear. You have to be lacking skills before you know something is wrong. But for me, well, it's created a level of patience for sure that I didn't have before. I think parenting does that anyways. But also, he thinks in a way that's completely different from me.
Hmm.
And I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of how he views the world, um, there, he doesn't operate from a space of I should,
Hmm.
which, most of us really struggle with that. But there, like, he doesn't care about what you do for a living. He doesn't care where you were born. He doesn't care about your religion. It's not even a thought process for him, I don't think.
Right.
It's just
Right.
not even on his radar. He just takes you for face value.
Yeah.
And it's like, I like you or I don't like you. I'm comfortable with you or I'm not comfortable with you. So, like, when you spend your life parenting somebody that doesn't filter people through those filters, it's amazing. But also just his view on things, and having to get out of my way of thinking and into his way of thinking when I don't really know what his way of thinking is because he can't tell me,
Yeah. Yeah. You just,
um,
yeah,
has
you're
been
just,
fascinating. But we definitely have a great form of communication because there's very few words.
mhm.
So for he and I are very in tune, and I've been his primary parent for most of his life. So there's a real connection there that doesn't involve language, and that's
Yeah.
always amazing.
Well, and that's what I think for me, it speaks to this kind of telepathy, for whether it's through ideas or through heart or through energy, but it's this very clear channel
Mhm.
back and forth, which is really unique experience to have.
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
in hindsight, I wouldn't trade it for anything. In spite of some of the challenges that it presents, it's
Mhm.
still one of the most amazing uh,
Yeah.
relationships and experiences that I will ever have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's just a purity to him that isn't the norm in people,
Yeah.
and everybody notices it. Like, everywhere he goes,
Mhm.
like, the world just opens up to him
Yeah.
because he doesn't have any restrictions on anything.
Well, we sometimes talk about this idea of like living from your soul instead of living from your ego, and it sounds like he's doing that all the time. It's
He's
just
got it
us to
figured
see.
out. And I
Yeah.
spent years worrying about him, especially in terms of schooling and what he was absorbing, because you don't really know because the communication isn't there. And he's not the kind of person to just say, hey, this is what I learned,
Right.
even in his
Right.
nonverbal way. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, he figures things out on his own with very little interference from me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the way that he goes about it is like nothing that I ever would have figured out. Oh, I want to learn this, so I guess I'll figure out how to teach myself how to do it. And then he just seems to gravitate towards things that
Hmm.
teach
Hmm.
him whatever he's ready to learn.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Um, well, I think we'll wrap up there. It's a lot to think about, and I think people watching have a good idea of sort of where your focus is and sort of the gifts that you have. So, what we'll do is we'll put all of the information for Catherine Elizabeth's contact below, either on this YouTube or when you go to the Visionary Psychics page, you'll be there and people will connect to this video and they'll also figure out how to schedule with you. So, Catherine, I want to just thank you so much for coming along today and being part of this really wonderful community. And just so glad that you're here with us now. So,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much. It's been wonderful, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.